Hi guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Steve Hall, and on the other end, as always, is Pascal Floor. Pascal, one quick question. Yeah. For those viewing, they've been seeing this figure to your left shoulder.
Yeah.
Who's this?
It's All Might.
All Might.
It's hero number 1 from My Hero Academia.
I have this. I think the series is available on Netflix, and I have it on my to watch list because I see this guy all the time, and I'm like, it must be good.
Me personally, the story is, I think, very, very good. It has some parts which I don't really like, but the drawing style, I don't really like it that much. It's a little bit too childish, in my opinion. Especially, it doesn't really match the roughness of the show at times. At times, it's very, very brutal, especially in the new season now. There's one. I can't spoil it. But some scenes are actually quite brutal, and for the way it's drawn, it doesn't really match sometimes. So it's not the greatest anime, but it has a very decent character development. But it's not one of my top animes, that's for sure.
Have you
top
seen
anime,
my figure?
Without a doubt, is... Oh, I didn't know that you got one.
Scott sent me this for Christmas.
Yeah, I ordered one.
Flicking you off?
I can see that. I always wanted to actually collect like figures and statues. Thing is, though, that you need to take care of them, and also you need to... They are very, very, very heavy. And I don't think that this one can carry all of the statues and figures because they are super heavy and they are actually quite tall. But I ordered one because they are most of the time limited edition. And I ordered my first proper statue, which will first arrive in July 2022. That's how long it takes to actually get to you.
So this is like a proper, because you can get little figures like I have, this guy and that guy, but there's like a proper ones.
Yeah, most of the time it's either PVC or resin. And resin is also a form of PVC, a little bit harder though, and it costs much, much more if you get a resin statues, but they look freaking incredible. And there is even one from Dragon Ball where Goku is fighting Vegeta in the first season, where Vegeta is then doing his garlic gun, and Goku is doing his Kamehameha, and you can get both statues, which in it for itself separately cost a lot of money already, but you can get them both and then set that up as if they are fighting each other, and it looks incredible, but it's very expensive.
I wonder if this is what the bodybuilding kind of figurine, like bodybuilding trophies you win, where it's like a man, like, I don't know, like an Arnie, because they're really heavy. They're really heavy as well.
That this is resin as well. Yeah.
I have no idea. Anyway, and now you've got, is that a paradise flavor?
Yes. It is.
Monster.
It's Ultra Fiesta. It is.
Oh, Fiesta. Okay.
They are new here in Germany. And I was just at Aldi, and there was this package of like, I don't know how many there are in there in one. It's like 16 maybe. And I thought like, this is exactly what I need for the upcoming weeks. So I just ordered them because they, to me at least, this is the best monster I've ever tasted.
I'm still, I think, a big fan of the original, just the black and blue one. But I haven't had that in ages because I end up just buying the white monsters because there's normally a deal where I can get each one for about £1 or less on Amazon. And I've been ordering that like 24 crates for the last, like my whole prep basically. Yeah. I've been having a monster every day.
Speaking of which, we can go directly into that. I know that you're going to dig hard here over in the next couple of days because we've touched on it last week already. We are coming close to the, in quotation marks, end, like the planned end. You never know what's about to happen, whether you're qualifying for like worlds or so. So the planned end is close. Yeah. Right. And I think that right now you really need to dig, and it's not going to be easy. And I would like to know what it is that you're actually then doing moving forward.
Cool. So I think it was actually only a week ago. I've been making more quick adjustments recently because my scale weight has just been sticky and I actually feel good for it. Like I've kind of used the analogy of you're on a tightrope and you're moving along. I don't ever want to make such an adjustment where I'm risking falling off. And like I said to you, I'm like right at the end of the tightrope where I just get to have a bit of a chillax time and I'm done because I'm going through the peak week and deload. So if there's a time to push and risk kind of falling off, as it were, now's the time because I can repair and recoup very, very soon. So I think it was just over a week and a half ago, I already made the adjustment where my steps increased by about 2,000 on average per day. My calories on average per day dropped by 200, which is a reasonable shift down for where I am right now. So I made that shift. And then again, I came into this week and I had one refeed day and then I had another, and I was just like, you know what? I'm in the last week. I feel pretty good after these couple of refeed days. Let's make another push because I can. Like assessing risk versus reward. It's very like not highly risky to push a little bit harder now, knowing I'm coming into that kind of relaxed time that it's going to be peak week. So all I did was make basically my fats are sitting around 40 grams and they were sitting nearer 50. So almost 100 calories. And then my carbohydrates were sitting at 300 and they have been moved to 280 or 270. And I can't remember exactly, but another like decent shift downwards. And then my protein's sticking around 200, not really changing that. So another at least 200 calories taken down. So 400 to 500 calories down in these last 2 weeks. So pretty aggressive. And I'm interested to know what your thoughts are, Pascal, because I have my own thoughts. But my weight, pretty much, I was losing really like linearly, nicely to about 174 173 pounds, and then I dropped down to 172. And I pretty much hovered at 172 pounds, almost on the dot, like literally almost on the dot. Like there were several days where I weighed in 172, 172, 172 for like the last at least 2 to 3 weeks, where I've just settled at this point. And I have my own thoughts to what's going on because I've obviously shifted calories down, I've pushed harder, and I think more details have been revealing themselves slowly. But in those sort of situations where if that would like a client, what would you think is going on? Would you just be like, we're not pushing hard enough, we've adapted, or?
And most of the time in situations like this, I know that we've talked about it in the past, that we are not as conservative as we were in the past when the scale weight isn't moving, that we are immediately making some adjustments. But if I made a major adjustment to their diet, I wait it out. Because when they've lost weight in an appropriate manner already before that, appropriate in the sense that, let's just say you've lost like 0.5% and you just wanted to push it a little bit harder, what's then the likelihood that all of a sudden you're stalling out? It's very unlikely, right? So this is the moment when then we're falling back to kind of trusting the process. And especially if you can explain that nothing else has really changed, that you may even have picked up some of the energy expenditure, right? That you've been a little bit more assertive there as well. So if you can rule out that other variables have not changed for the worse, because we know when you're not tracking the step counts, it could easily be that you're just getting very, very inactive or so, right? But if that's not in your first prep, right? And if that's not the case, and you know for certain you're now in a bigger caloric deficit, I don't think it's then a good idea to make another adjustment just because the scale weight doesn't really tell us what we want to hear or see.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you, especially when I give you more context. Like I ended up pushing my fiber a little bit higher because I was having more of this soy meat replacement, and it has all these vegan foods have so much fiber in. So I'm now removing that because it's like, but even per half serving, it was like 8 grams of fiber, and I was just like, man, this is pushing my fiber too high. It was a bit ridiculous.
What about your digestion?
Yeah, my digestion.
All right.
No.
All right.
So I was like bloated, a little bit constipated, like, you know, when you can feel it and you're just like, this needs to pass.
Steve, are you at the point, I mean, you've prepped now 3 times since you're together with Charlotte. Also, you're together since a long time. Are you farting when you are around her?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, all right,
Yeah.
all right. So
I don't know when that wasn't. It didn't happen though, to be honest.
Because I've told you about it in a couple of episodes back. This is the one thing where Katie and I are just like, we don't want to start. I know that this time will come at some point, right? But we do everything except for maybe pooping in front of another. But I know when she's pooping, so right. But when it comes to farting, over the past couple of weeks, I told you about that. My digestion has really turned to the worse. No matter what I'm eating and how much I'm eating, I'm just always getting some kind of, I don't know, some kind of stomach distress, right? And then I always needed to hold back. Now I cut my calories though. And ever since then, because I was forced to eat even less, it's all right again. But it was crazy to me because I was always, at the end of the day, I was always having stomach cramps because I always needed to hold back. And good thing for you now, even though that you had a high fiber intake, you just let everything out.
Yeah. It's right. Actually, out of interest, what's your fiber sitting at?
I'm not really tracking that.
I was going to say, I didn't think you normally tracked it.
Yeah, this is also one thing that I'm not tracking with my athletes anymore. Unless, and this is more so for context reasons so that people understand where I'm coming from with this. I don't think it's valuable data to track or for people to overly fixate about if their caloric intake or nutritional habits are solid. If you have plenty of vegetables, plenty of fruits, you should be in a very reasonable range. And if then the client tells me I have like stomach issues or so, or I always feel hungry, then I'm looking closer into that. But before that isn't the case, I think that you must be then in a reasonable range, all right? So that's the thing for me. And I know that with each and every single meal, I have either some fruits or some vegetables. Hence, I know that and also right now, it's not borderline crazy in regards to the portion size, and it wasn't before that. And that's why I'm right now not tracking it really.
I just know particularly in prep where people's fiber can get like out of control, which is where I'm in a bit of a risk of because I'm on decent carbs. Whereas even when people are on lower carbs, their fiber's like, all of their carbs is fiber basically, where they're just having like cognac noodles and packets of those.
I think one of the reasons why I was experiencing like digestive issues was more like sugary alcohols before.
Okay, yeah.
Because every now and then I had something like, I don't know, a low calorie ice cream or so. Right? And they are most of the time pretty high in sugary alcohols. And I think that this is what caused then digestive issues. And because right now it's fine, and this is what I definitely dropped.
From our chat last time and from pushing harder, I decided to incorporate a little bit of chewing gum.
All right.
And I wonder, I'm not having much, so maybe I'm having 2 to 3, maybe 4
packs.
Tabs. No, not packs. And I never ever have more than one at one go. It's only ever one. I never let myself have more because that's when I'm like, I'll have another.
Yeah.
So I'm really bad even with like diet drinks. I bought some like caffeine-free Pepsi Max, and I'll have one, and then I'll be like, why shouldn't I have another? I've got more out there, and they're basically no calories. Like I should have another.
Yeah.
But I know it upsets my stomach after I have too many. But I find it so hard to convince myself not to keep having it because the body craves something. Yeah. So I find not having those in helps me a ton. So the chewing gum, I wonder if it's upsetting my stomach a little bit, having just a small amount. I'm not sure.
It's funny because this is the situation that I was facing with the low calorie ice cream. I enjoyed having it still in my diet, and it didn't really make up a big chunk of my caloric intake, right? I thought like, I can't keep it in, and I'm still losing weight, and I didn't want to give it up, right? Up until the point where I then decided to actually push. And this was, of course, the first choice to then go, because that's 350 calories just gone like that. And I don't necessarily need that. Right? But at the time when I saw that the weight was still coming down, I was just like, I don't want to get rid of it. Right? So being a little bit stubborn and irrational in some kind of way.
Yeah, it's funny how you kind of get like that. So I have found my stomach has been a bit more, but it's also difficult because there's so many different factors that are involved, such as just your digestion slows and gets worse as you diet longer and you get more stressed.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to monitor it during peak week. And inevitably, when I start increasing food, way less gum, way less of these other things, because you just don't kind of quote unquote need them as much. So yeah, I'm still only on, I basically have one coffee in the morning. I have one Monster. And then that's mostly all I have in terms of like that's all I have caffeine wise. And like maybe I'll have 2 or 3 pieces of gum and I'll have a Diet Coke or something if I have it in. But I think the best for me is not to have it in. And maybe like I buy one on the way home from the gym, but it's like I just buy one bottle and I'm much better just doing that versus like having it there. I don't know why it's a funny one.
No, but I can absolutely see that. And this is especially the leaner you're getting, the more you just need to stick to certain strategies and hold on to certain routines because you start to act irrationally in many, many ways.
Yeah. And actually, I think one lesson I've already taken away from this contest prep, and I'm a bit gutted about it, to be honest, that it's a takeaway, but I guess it's something a lot of competitors learn until they get there. And maybe I'll get there. We'll have to see. But I think there's almost always another 5 pounds to lose. Where
you don't have to tell me.
I know. It's like you think it's going to be this, take another 5 pounds off and give yourself another month. And I think I just needed to sort of started another 5 pounds leaner. And next time, actually, like people think I started quite lean. For me, that I didn't start that lean for me. And I thought that was an okay starting point. But I think if I just had like a diet before the diet or a little bit of a mini cut to get me a bit closer to stage condition, then I wouldn't have had, then I'd just be closer to the goal and the time would have been enough. Whereas where I am right now, I'm like, maybe it would have been nice to have a few more weeks to see how long this because you have stubborn areas. And for me, quite clearly is the rear glutes and the lower back.
Yeah.
That's my stubborn areas. And it's like, I just don't know when they're going to fully shift. And I'm everywhere else is pretty much completely fucking dialed. And it's just like, fuck, when are these areas going to shift? Or if, and I think this peak week will reveal a lot. And the good news is after this peak week leading into the UKFBA, I have another 2 weeks before the WNBF. And I have at least therefore, I think, one solid week where I can dig if I need to, because I'll have basically had a diet break and I'll be refueled. And so maybe another whole week of like shifting a good amount, I can see some new details coming through. But yeah,
so it sounds like that you have the feeling that you didn't plan in enough time for the prep?
Possibly, yeah. Given how things have gone towards the end. Like, it's a tricky one because, a month ago, I was stage ready. Like, you could say I was stage ready. I placed in a competitive show. I placed for finals. And then, like, a week later, or so, 2 weeks later, I won a competitive show. So you could say I was, like, stage ready. But then I think there's, like, a zone of, you're stage ready, but are you I don't know, what people call fat-free, which isn't fat-free, but are you elite? Like conditioned, is everything in? And I think some people never get there in their whole bodybuilding career. Yeah. But that's where I'm like, I want to get to. And part of me feels a little bit like I might not make it there this season, which actually makes me quite sad that I can't maybe get to that point. But it also fuels me for next season that I do, knowing that, I could start a bit leaner, give myself that ample time, dig into that period. So yeah, I don't want to say that I'm not going to get there because I really am wanting to, but there's only so much you can do, and it's not worth me sprint finishing to try and chase an outcome and then sacrificing other areas, because like I said, I'm on that tightrope. So yeah, I'm not sure at this point. Who can tell? Because again, if I qualify for Worlds, imagine if I did, then probably do have enough time actually, and it all worked in my favor.
That's what I was thinking as well.
But who knows?
So I can absolutely see where you're coming from, and this is your 3rd season, so your expectations are quite different than they were in the past. You've gained a lot of muscle mass. Because of that, you're expecting so much more from yourself in regards to where to place and all that kind of stuff. But I do believe that when Worlds is now on the table, because this is the goal, right? This was the goal. And that's why you didn't want to be 100% yet for then the last qualifier, so WMBF UK on the 31st of October, but more so at around, let's say 90 to 95%, and then push for the last bit into Worlds. All right, and then you have effectively 3 weeks where you really can start to dig. So really start to dig if you want to and if you feel like it, right? And I think that then it will show itself of whether this was enough time or not. But I think you're always going to be a little bit wiser after an entire season. It's also something that you told me, right? Now that you're getting leaner and leaner, you're for the first time able to really tell what your strong suits or stronger body parts are and what you have to work on in the off season. This is always something that I said to all of my athletes. You're first able to really tell what your weakness is when you're getting very, very lean, because you can just be one of those people who have a very favorable body fat distribution and make then some body parts look more appealing than they actually and bigger than they actually are, and then you lean down and you have nothing. Right?
I find for me it was my abs. Until I dieted down, I thought I had decent abs, and people think I have good ab development because they show themselves when I'm quite high body fat. But I mean, it's all right now. They're not terrible, but they're still not amazing.
But they have improved tremendously.
Yeah, but I learned that with my second contest prep. I was like, man, my abs are fucking weak. They make some of my shots look really not how I would like them to. And I can't believe how much the abs actually add to an aesthetic. Like, people really put abs on the back burner, don't they, for the most part? I think you're lucky if you have great abs just genetically, but a lot of us don't.
Really?
So it's a hard one, and it reinforces what you need to improve. And also I find people underestimate how much fat they have on their legs a lot of the time, males. Like, they think they have like big quads and big hamstrings. It's like, there's no definition there. And quite a lot of your off season, there's no definition there. In fact, for you actually have decent definition, and your legs are a strong suit for you.
Yeah, that's for sure. Unfortunately though, the quads still carry a decent amount of fat. But still lines are showing through, but it's more like this softer line look, you know? It's not really like chiseled. And I don't think that I will get there to that really chiseled look, unfortunately, but I don't have to. But what really this cutting phase has shown me is that my lower body is quite a strong body part of mine. Very nice muscle bellies, and also good definition. My glutes and hamstring come in very, very early in comparison to, I have competitors now where you don't even see anything in their glutes or hamstrings. And that doesn't mean that they are not lean. It's just some people have a very, very hard time getting some definition there. However, if you take a look at my front side of my upper body, to be honest, it's pathetic in my opinion. I have no ab definition, chest, saggy tits basically. The lats don't really flare out, and I know what to work on. I just know what to work on and really put an emphasis on. I hardly ever prescribe like emphasis blocks unless there's a huge discrepancy. And for me personally, if I'm very honest with myself, the upper body in comparison to the lower body is miles ahead than the upper body. And the upper body does need so much more attention in the next gaining phase, so much more attention. And then I have to think about how I want to go about it and how to set it up. Because I also, of course, don't want to neglect the lower body. If it's your stronger body part, it's not that you need to rest on it, but you still want to develop it to make it even more so pop out. But at the same time, the other body parts need to catch up as well. And this is something that I have then to focus on the next time that I'm in a longer gaining phase, that the upper body, and especially also the abs, they need to actually get a lot of work. Especially the lats, that they pop out from the side and stuff. But this is valuable information, right? And it makes it then also appear, because you said it yourself, when it comes to the aesthetics, right? Because I don't really have a good ab development, and also the lats are not really popping out, and that makes me look so much less muscular than I maybe am, right? Because the lower body is great. And also the definition is coming out already, which is something that some people don't have. But once again, so many people are more so focused on the upper body. And when I take a look at some competitors, their upper body is far outpacing mine. Whereas when you take a look at the lower body, I'm just like, hey, I'm actually already starting to be competitive in the lower department, but upper body, I'm miles ahead.
Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of the Revive Stronger member site. Inside you'll find a thriving forum, a growing exercise library, presentations, research reviews, and courses. If you want to get involved, sign up via the description. Yeah, I think it's coming from someone who, like, I've been in that similar position where, like, I had these parts and I was like, I just don't have the nice X frame, don't look like an aesthetic bodybuilder, but you can definitely work on it. And I think that's the beauty of bodybuilding. And that's why I love it, because it's really like a long man's game, and like you have to be strategic and you get paid for being consistent in the long term, which is something that I've always been good at. You've always been good at, rather than like, I don't know, you just have one special talent and like that you rest on your laurels, whereas you're not going to. I do feel sorry for you though with the abs, because they're not fun to train at all. They suck.
I hate it as well.
Which is, unfortunate. I don't think anyone enjoys training abs. And so it's kind of one of those. I was going to make a joke. You need to follow like a men's physique split, basically.
Probably. I mean, something like that, where I'm really focusing on but I had a high frequency already for something like shoulders and bicep already. But the thing is that there's something that I told you in a voice message. I think this is where then my years of training as a power lifter actually show itself now in my physique. Because when I was doing powerlifting, I, of course, barely trained the upper body. So the things that I did was, of course, bench pressing, but I never had the feeling that bench pressing did a lot for my chest, more so for tricep strength and stuff, right? And of course,
you're a strong bencher.
Yeah. But the lower body, of course, did get so much more attention for a longer time span. Of course, when you just look at it from in a vacuum, then you would say like it was still low volume, right? But we know that low volume doesn't mean that you can't grow. And if you then do it over like 2 years or even 3 years, then of course there will be more of a gap in between. And I think that this shows in my physique now that my legs are like probably 2 to 3 years ahead of where my upper body is.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I think that I can relate to this. And I wonder if the listeners can relate to it, in that for me, when I trained legs, I very often focused on squats, like largely. That was a big amount of my training, and not really like focused on controlling them, full range of motion. And I was more focused on the numbers and low bar. And I have good glute development, but my quads always lacked. And I've never directly trained my glutes, not really, not for a long time. I haven't done like direct glute work, because they just end up growing kind of from everything else. And it wasn't until I really focused on like hack squats, lunges specifically for the glutes, things like this, that they started, like the quads actually started coming up. So yeah, it's similar to you in that you can see, like people talk about, I played football when I was a kid, so my legs are really like quite muscular. It's like, no, they're not. But powerlifting and like how you've started training, definitely. Because for me, I mean, I can make a squat as quad focused as possible, and I still don't think I get a ton of actual quality quad work. Maybe I'll probably use them again in the off season at some point. But for me, the hack squat was like, now I'm feeling like just it's all knee extension and all quad. So yeah, exercise selection, I think definitely can play quite a big role actually.
Yeah. But it is what it is, right? These are the things and the facts that lay in front of us. And these are the things that we then have to work with. It doesn't really matter what it is that we hope or wish for. I also then send a message to Brett Freeman, once again, who's helping you out at times as well with the peak week. And he gave me an honest opinion about my physique as well. And everything that he said, I was in complete agreement on as well, in regards to the upper body, that I don't have the best shape for bodybuilding, that I lack the muscularity in my upper body, but that the lower body is strong, right? And it's good to get that confirmation from someone else so that you can objectively sit down and think about what to do next and then work on it, right?
Yeah.
And then also in terms of how much you want to gain, the typical thing, right? I think most of the time we are all fully victim to a situation where we can't really be 100% objective about ourselves. This is something that we've talked about over and over again, that when it comes to coaching yourself, even if you think that you are objective and rational, sometimes you're still acting emotionally on many things. And this is something that I've realized myself. And I think a couple of months ago, I even said to you that I thought I'm carrying more fat than I actually admitted that I carry, and that I'm actually fatter than I thought that I am. And this turns out to be true, right? And this is something that I'm first realizing now. And this is what I mean with not staying objective in many ways. And I think that someone else could have looked at my physique way more objectively and tell me like, man, you have much more fat to lose than you really think. But in that instance, I can do it for others, but to myself, it was more of a hard thing to come to that conclusion.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of coaching. And yeah, I think it's, especially as you're getting less objective, as you get leaner, you kind of subjectivities start to come in. And you probably have two people, one person that's going to push themselves into the ground, and then the other person who might not quite push hard enough. And I've tried to stay as rational as possible. So when I have checked in with Brett and I've been like, I don't know if I'm being rational, but this is my thoughts. And he's actually said I've stayed pretty rational. Part of me wonders though, if I had a coach on the outside, if they'd be chopping things off sooner, and maybe I'm not as on top of it because I'm coaching others and I'm more on top of what they're doing. And I let mine kind of sit in the background, which in some ways acts in my favor because I don't stress about it. But sometimes I wonder if, or maybe I should have made a change a little sooner. And that would have just been completely taken out of my hands if I was just 100% coached by someone else. Yeah. So that is a consideration for me, particularly for like, if I do start a prep leaner, then getting a coach for that period of time, just to kind of take it out of my hands and just be like, this is what I'm doing. I'm just going to follow what coach says. Because I think I'd be pretty good at just following orders. But when I'm left to my own devices, yeah, unless you're being quite like selfish and like almost acting like you're taking as much time on your own stuff as you are as a client's stuff, which can get tricky, especially when you're kind of fatigued and you're working with a lot of athletes. I wonder if that's kind of a bit of a weakness that I've had this time round, where despite having you in my corner, Brett in my corner, because I haven't got like an actual coach who's coming and checking in with me and I have to report to, I'm potentially not as on top of it as I would like to be. But again, it's one of those where you don't always know. Yeah.
To be honest, though, I didn't help you a lot during this prep. It wasn't that you sent me a lot of things and I gave you feedback on it, just so that the listener knows that. And sometimes then I wonder in this situation, it may be because you and we are people who don't want to lose the control and give it to someone else. I said it in the past already. I wish I had a coach at times, but the thing is, I'm a control freak, and I have to admit that. I think I would be a terrible client if I'm not 100% committed to it. I really do believe that I would be a terrible client, because I just am someone who likes to do the stuff himself, and I know that's not always the best thing, right? There's always someone who's better in everything in life than I am. And I have a hard time, though, giving that control away to someone else. And I wonder whether this actually hinders you in making the best progress or the most efficient decisions. Often, I think that we will come to a certain conclusion or to the same conclusion as someone else would have for us, but maybe it takes us much longer, because we are still fighting that inner battle with ourselves of getting there, right? Same now, just as an example with what I said and talked about me and how fat I was and how high I pushed my body weight. It was maybe because I was fighting an inner battle and didn't want to confront myself with reality. And maybe also because I was blind to reality, because I thought and wanted to see what I did see. Like, I wanted to feel as if I gained a shit ton of muscle. And that's why I thought I did, you know?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. There's pros and cons for sure.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can make calls quicker because you're seeing everything right there. And when you are a coach yourself, you're very, very knowledgeable. And I love working with other coaches because they can tell me stuff. And I'm like, but actually, and now you say it, because so often it must happen to you, where someone will be reporting into me and they give their opinion or what have you. And I'm like, no, this is what we should do. And they come back to me and like, that's exactly what I would do as a coach. But when I look at it and do it for myself, I can't make that decision.
Yeah.
I guess you get that all the time. And probably people listening know as well.
That's what I mean. I think that a good coach that I trust, he would always make, or not always, but most of the time make the right call. Whereas I wouldn't do it immediately for myself. I think I would still come to that conclusion at some point, but it will then take much, much longer. And that is, of course, why you want to get a coach, so that you don't second guess things and that you are making the right call from an objective perspective instead of from, I don't know, an unconscious emotional decision. Even though that you think you act rationally, you are actually acting emotionally because what it is that you want is actually interfering with what it is that you need to do.
Right. Yeah, it was appreciated. I said to Brett, like, I'm not acting irrationally here, like making this cut. Like, you think this is the right move? Like, am I on like where you would be thinking? It was like, no, actually, I'm on board with you. If you were being irrational, you would have suggested doing La McDonald's rapid fat loss protocol or something. Yeah. And I was like, oh, good. Like, because in some ways that could be tempting, especially in the position I'm in now, just like, fuck it, let's just go. But that would be the wrong call. So it's quite nice now and then to know that you're being rational. But like we've mentioned, our emotions are all over the place, actually, a little bit when you are dieting, you're getting lean and have been for a long time. Like, you're not the same person as when you're well fed. And so it would make sense that some of your decision making is a little bit less than ideal at times. So, and equally, this applies to cutting phases, but I think it's even more in massing phases where people just get complacent. That's the biggest thing I see with my clients, where they go for a few weeks and I'm just like, dude, we're not seeing progress here because you're just getting comfortable with what we're doing. We need to keep pushing. And then when I see other people and I'm just like, I don't know, maybe they're a competitive bodybuilder and they compete like every couple of years. And I'm like, you're not seeing progress, because I just imagine they switch off and they love kind of competing because it gets them dialed in and they love all of that. And I think there's a balance. You don't want to have the same sort of like complete blinkers and like 100% all out bodybuilding. I think it's rare that you ever want that. But in your off season, you still need to be on top of it. And I guess that's why we call this the improvement season, because that's where you actually make the changes. Yeah, that's where you actually improve. And I definitely applied that in my last improvement season, but I see people not, and that holds a lot of people back as well. And that's where, like, I love coaching guys through extended off seasons, because then you make sure that they're not complacent and you are their accountability. Even if they could do it all themselves, they wouldn't if you weren't in their corner. Yeah. They'd kind of, just drop off.
No, I totally agree. I think that this is one of the most common issues while people aren't seeing any kind of sorry for that, significant progress. I hate to say it, but probably me, myself included. I would love to be the guy who's, I don't know, patting myself on my own back and be like, yeah, I've always been highly disciplined in a gaining phase, but I wasn't. Of course, I can find excuses. I can bring up like external things, health reasons, kids, family, but that shouldn't really impact my training too much, because in and for itself, how much time am I spending in the gym?
We had COVID at least.
That's true.
That was one good excuse.
That's true. But yeah.
Why didn't you break into a gym, Pascal? Fuck's sake, man.
But in all honesty, though, let's just assume that COVID didn't happen, or in a situation where COVID at least doesn't cause any kind of lockdowns and stuff. There is no good reason as to why you shouldn't make it happen. And I know this is me now being or acting quite selfishly, because I know that there are some people who have very, very limited time, who are working, I don't know, in an office from morning to nighttime, have a family at home. For them, it's of course much more complicated than us spoiled brats here sitting at our home desk, being able to work kind of when we want to. I mean, today I woke up at 4:30 in the morning and did my check-ins. Who's able to do that if they are working at or in an office, right? And this then, of course, allows you to train at different times. But once again, I just do think that there were just too many times where I didn't 100%, where I wasn't 100% focused. I have my theories as to why that is the case, but they shouldn't really sound like excuses or so, because there is really no excuse. I should own it. I should stand up for it, because in the end, these were decisions and my priorities that I set for myself.
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
And that's exactly it. It's priorities, isn't it? Because I think even that person who has that desk job and that family, could they edge out? Like, could they take the priority away from work and put it into bodybuilding? They probably could, but do they want to?
Yeah.
They might not want to, and that's fine. Like, that's absolutely acceptable. Like you said, it's owning your actions and knowing why you chose to do certain things. I think there are bodybuilders who even take time, like they're going to prioritize family for a couple of years, or their business. I definitely see it with people who they don't compete for a while and they're just more so like just in the trenches with their clients and building their business. That's fair enough. You can't always have it as number one.
I'm not following JP, but just to bring him up, he stepped away from bodybuilding as I recall, like a longer time ago, because he wanted to focus entirely on building the business. I'm not following him. It could be completely wrong as to what I'm saying right now, but I think that this was the last thing that I've seen and heard, that he's stepping away from bodybuilding, and he could still continue bodybuilding, right? But he's focusing on the business. So yeah.
On that note, this is a very, very large tangent in a way, because you brought up JP and I was recently on Dave McConey's podcast, and I don't know if I should really be saying this, that we might be collaborating at some point. I'm going to say it's pretty sure that that's going to happen. But anyway, he was asking about, because I think some people realize that they think we coached JP. And I was like, not really. Like Pascal helped him a little bit, but can't say too much about it. Anyway, long story short, it just reminded me of RAR and the debate between failure and stuff. But something I've noticed, don't know if you have, people are getting a little bit more accepting of it. It's becoming way less of a thing where people are like, oh my gosh, RAR's for pussies. And it's becoming there's a way broader audience that are starting to actually use it. And I don't know if it's because people are understanding it better. I don't know if it's certain people of influence have started to use it, and so they're like, all right, fair enough. I don't know if they're starting to see people like Jared and Mike and maybe even myself who are utilizing such an approach and actually seeing very good progress and results. Don't know. I don't know. It was new, shiny, people are uncomfortable with it. Maybe it's just now people getting more comfortable. Where I'm coming from is I've seen far more enhanced bodybuilders starting to use it, where they were definitely from a JP style of background previously, of very high intensities, low volume. I don't know how they're getting on with it, but it was just interesting. I don't know if you've seen it, but I've just seen more and more people use it, and I've seen less backlash. I just thought it was an interesting trend.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but just also then to say, we as Revive never trained JP or so, right? When after the debate, or not really the debate, but the podcast with Mike, I was in touch with JP. I helped him out with creating a program and trying to get him to do something like an ARIA approach. But this was only for a very, very temporary amount of time, was only for like 4 to 5 weeks or so. And he had, of course, due to his extensive background of training always to failure, a very hard time applying that to himself. So I can't really say that this was really something that he did in that regard. Right? I think that, yes, he probably kept some reps in reserve, but was it the way that how we would like people to use the RER method? I don't think it was, but that's just beside the point. I just wanted to make it sure that people don't mix it up or think that we coached him or so, right?
For years. That's why he's the beast he is.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also know that he received a lot of backlash from a lot of people, because I think that the industry knows each other. And then there are people, of course, who have a very strong opinion on the way, on the methodologies and the way the vast majority of people train. And if that's really the case, that the mindset or the view on RER is slightly changing, then that's a great thing, because it's like I always said in the past, if we were to sit down together and just train together, will we get along? Absolutely, right? Because, I mean, let's be real here, it's RER or non-RER. And I really believe that more people train with RER than they admit to, consciously or subconsciously. And if you are then smart about training and you're making progress, perfect, right? And if you're then educating people around a certain field or certain way in a responsible manner, that's perfect as well. And does it then need to be named RER? No, you can call it whatever you want. And we know this from even people, bodybuilders in the 70s, 80s, 90s. They were probably not training all of them to failure. We have lots of people who didn't train to failure, but never called it RER, because the concept of like a scale wasn't really there at that time. It was more like, I never go to failure, maybe. That's what they said. Or I leave something in the tank.
Yeah.
Right? Something like that. And if it's now more like a conceptualized way of training, I think it's great.
Yeah. I view it very similarly to like flexible dieting. Mm-hmm. And if it fits your macros, and obviously that can get taken too far the wrong way, which RER definitely can do as well, where people are like, you should never train to failure. That's awful. It's a terrible thing. Obviously, that's not our philosophy. Just like we don't preach like, oh yeah, you can eat whatever the hell you like and get great results as long as you hit your numbers. But I think it's very similar. Like if it fits your macros, a lot of bodybuilders were doing that type of approach and being flexible without calling it that. You know, I think it was Dorian Yates said something like he would have, a Mars bar within his like prep or something at the end of the day, because it just fit the numbers that he was trying to achieve or something. Or they substitute. He just didn't feel like having sweet potato one day, so he subbed in white rice or something. They were kind of doing it without knowing they were doing it. Like, oh, I don't track calories, but I can get to stage shredded. It's like, well, you're not tracking the calories, but you're making adjustments to a meal plan that like you're removing things, and that's inherently causing the calorie drop, and that's what's leading to the weight loss. So I think it's very much like you said, it's not that people just didn't put a name to it previously. Now there's a name to it. People are a bit uncomfortable with that for some reason, just like they were uncomfortable with, if it fits your macros, flexible dieting. But now we've seen like flexible dieting is like that's what most kind of quote unquote evidence-based bodybuilders do. And they certainly maybe use different iterations of it with meal plans, but they're looking at calories, they're looking at their scale weight, they're making adjustments according to macros. Like every kind of bodybuilder is now doing that. And I wonder if it's just like RER, those sort of evidence-based kind of concepts that are putting names to things that maybe were always somewhat used, is now like that's just going to go through a transitionary period as well, where it becomes just it's what people do now, you know.
Maybe it's also, or I would very much assume that it has something to do with the accessibility of information nowadays, that we have plenty of podcasts, we have plenty of actually IFBB pros who have now their YouTube channels where they actually truly reveal what it is that they are doing, on a more frequent basis, so that it's not just like you have one screenshot of the entire career of Dorian Yates, and then you assume or make that assumption that this is what he always trained like his entire lifting career. And now we have something like these YouTube channels where then, I don't know, John Jewett or so, he's sharing information about his entire kind of prep and his training career, what he's doing in a pretty much detailed way. And he's not the only one. A lot of people are doing that. And because of that, I think that then people get a better insight of what the bigger guys are doing. And of course, this is what people always have done. And they look up to the top. And then they go out and try it for themselves and figure out whether this is for them or not. And I think that maybe due to once again, the accessibility of information, it spreads a little bit more now, instead of back in the days, it was always made an assumption that every bodybuilder trained to failure. And this was then the underlying basis that was then spread around throughout the community of this is the only way of training. I think that there are many, many examples we can think of around training and nutrition where a lot of bro science was actually then around, and the word of mouth. And then over time, because everyone thought that this is the way of doing things, science picked up on it, and then other methodologies came out of it, right? And then first, over a longer period of time, the possibly more superior method took over. And I think that this doesn't just apply to training and nutrition, but it applies to every single aspect of life. If there's something new coming out with more evidence that seems to be a superior way, and I'm not saying that ARIA is the superior way of training. I'm just saying, generally speaking, when something is coming out to the forefront that may be superior, it was always this, that it wasn't immediately applied. It took months to years to sometimes decades to then take over the inferior thing. So, for example, the invention of a car. At first, everyone was laughing about the car. Who wants to drive a car? Man, I have horses here. They can do the same thing. Why would I want to own a car that is very, very slow and unreliable and all that kind of stuff? Right? They were making fun of cars. And now, does anyone actually travel with horses unless they are, I don't know, Brokeback Mountain or so? Right? And it took years, decades to actually then take over the world. And the same applies to so many, especially technological innovations. Early 2000s, I mean, there was the dot-com boom, right? Because before that, everyone was making fun of the internet and thought that this is the dystopian place to be. It has no future, yada, yada, yada. And now, the internet, we can't really think of a world without internet anymore, right? This is sometimes something like this just takes time, especially because everyone in the world is now so connected. Maybe then over time, bodybuilding is also changing to a better or kind of worse way, right? Who knows?
Yeah, I think like everything, there's people that just like the old school. Like there'd be people who like the horses. They're like, oh, the good old days, the horse and carriage. I'm just going to get everywhere like that.
The golden age fallacy.
Yeah.
Back then, everything was better. When in reality, from a factual perspective, it wasn't.
And people do that with training as well, where they're like, oh, look at these guys. They got big using the barbell basics. And you have people like the N1 guys and Coach Kassim coming out with these biomechanics and think, oh, maybe there's more efficient ways to lift and stuff like this. And it's like, you'd be wrong to side ultimately heavily with one or the other. And not saying that like N1 are very dogmatic, you can't use barbells ever. But if you were to go that way, you're normally somewhere in the middle with all of these things. And I think that's where the gold lies. That's where we try and lie. And I think that's where I'd recommend the listeners try and lie. Don't jump onto the new thing and just like focus on that. Use what's already been working. Try a bit of what's new. See how that applies to you. And because a lot of the like old stuff, like, I don't know, I think of like tilapia, like thins the skin or whatever. It's like, well, it's a protein source. It's low in fat and like probably like low calorie. So it probably helped with a calorie deficit and led to fat loss. And so it thinned the skin. Like people think it thinned the skin, but now you can think, now I know what the kind of principles were behind why that worked, I can be a bit more flexible in my approach, suit it to, I don't know, I like chicken, so I'm going to do the chicken. Yeah. Like, it's not magic that these various things have. So yeah, I think that was very well stated by you.
Yeah. And one more thing, even though that I hate human beings, no, just kidding. I would just love, and this is something that we've talked about so often already, that people would not be as vocal as they are at times and as aggressive when it comes to these viewpoints. Because, man, are we really fighting each other because I like to keep some reps in reserve and train to failure at times and you don't? Is that really why we are fighting and hate each other? And I would just love that people don't give other people such a shit for just lifting. Come on, I mean, it really doesn't want to get into my head when it comes to these kind of things that there is even kind of a tribalism going on. That there's a certain group training a certain way and bashing the other group. And I don't get it. And we even received time to time actually some shit for things that we do in regards to training. And I'm just wondering, like, come on. We are lifting weights. If we really fight about something like this, all that proves is how privileged we are. Nothing else. Right? 50 to 60 years ago, people, or 70 years ago, especially with the Second World War, people had some really tough shit to go through. And we are fighting about whether we like to go or train to muscular failure or not. Come on, give me a break.
I was just going to pull it all the way back to the original kind of talking about, I guess, bodybuilding and the season. That's something I fall in love with every time I compete, is the camaraderie between competitors. Like, it's just been lovely to just be engrossed in it and like chat with guys. It's all online, unless you're at show days. But just to be like, oh, awesome seeing you, like, oh, you look great, like, how are things going? How many weeks out are you? And like, you're in the shit together. And I love that part of it.
Yeah.
Because it brings out the best in a lot of people. I think competing can also bring out the worst in some people, unfortunately, but I haven't experienced that a lot. And I'm also experienced the real positive where people really want you to do well. It feels that way. Yeah. And people are excited to see like, oh, I don't know what you're going to bring to stage. Yeah. And
it seems like once again, it's just the protection of the internet. Keyboard warrior kind of shit. Yeah. You're super vocal behind the keyboard, but once you meet up, hey, you get along just fine. Also something that we've talked about so often already. Because when you're competing against each other or with another, is anyone there thinking about how the other person is training? No, absolutely not. You guys have a good time together, right? It's like you said, camaraderie. And sometimes it's just, I don't know, the internet, maybe we are still not used to handle the internet in an appropriate manner. And that's why we are such assholes at times when it comes to interacting online.
I think that's also why I love the way we coach with our video check-ins, because I think quite often text, and that's how you mostly interact with people online, is just through like text. And actually, I guess to bring it to the podcast, you bring on two people that people think they hate each other or they have such different views. And like at a time, it was Eric Helms and Mike Israetel, right? People are like, these guys must really dislike each other. You bring them on the podcast, they get on like a house on fire and they agree on virtually everything. And it goes super well. Those are the episodes I love, where people think these two people couldn't be more opposite. You bring them on, they agree really nicely with basically everything. Oh. There's a small little minutia that none of us know the answer to, that they slightly have different opinions on, but they're like bros. They're like, yeah, we're both just trying to get jacked. We're trying to help people get healthier and fitter and grow muscle. This is awesome. It's like you said, when people meet up and talk properly and can communicate, things go way smoother. And then it's the little digs here and there that, I don't know, text sometimes happens where people get misconstrued.
Absolutely. So Steve, UK DFBA next, WMBF UK afterwards, and then WMBF Worlds, right? That's the journey for the next couple of weeks.
I need to sign up to the Two Bros. They have a natural show, which is a week after the WNBF. I don't know. I know I need to sign up to that soon anyway, so I will be doing that show. I was going to say, if I qualify for Worlds, maybe I won't bother doing it, but I think I'll probably do it anyway. It just might change how I peak for it, depending on... I think this first peak for the UK FBA will clear up a lot in terms of how does my physique really look? Because, like I said, my digestion's been off. I had my vaccine caused stress, water retention. I've been ill. I've been pushing harder. So I'm kind of interested to see how much fatigue am I really holding? How much detail is that really hiding? And then that will give me loads of direction of where to go afterwards. If I need to dig even harder, or if I can do a Dirk from 3DMJ. I don't know if I can start reversing yet. I don't know if I'm privileged enough to be in that position just
this
yet.
Is now,
we'll see.
At some point, we all say, do the Dirk, and we all know what we're talking and talking about and referring to.
It'll be like 10% of our audience will know what we're saying.
Do it. Now.
Dirk probably won't even be in the chat.
No. Cool. So guys, thank you very much as always for listening. Leave a thumbs up, leave a subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section below. All that kind of good stuff, right? And then I guess we speak with each other next week.
Talk to you soon, guys.
Cheers.
So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Flor. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people. But each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge, and I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.